And welcome, whiskey brothers and sisters, to another episode. This is episode 4 of the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph. I'll be your host tonight. And there we go. There's my little thingy. And I'm joined by Mr. Blair Phillips. He is the co-author of this book right here called The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries, the portable expert to over 200 distilleries and the spirits they make. And we're continuing our Canadian whiskey journey with a review of this bottle right here. Eau Claire's Single Malt Whiskey Batch 004. And Blair, do you have an idea why they did the 00 in front of it? Is this like an ode to James Bond, some type?
I'm assuming that eventually they're going to work up to a batch 100, so they're just keeping room on the label.
Keeping room on. Keep going. Okay. I like the 004, 007 type thing. And they've got a new one that came out 1 week ago yesterday. It was their, is it called Batch 10 or Barrel 10? I think it's Barrel 10, single barrel. They just.
Oh, I heard it. Yeah, I heard about that.
And I just heard about it today, and I'm on the email list, so I missed the email where they said they sold out in 30 minutes. So I'm out of luck, but I'll try to find some friends in Calgary I can do it. Let's take a second. We're going to look at this distillery, kind sir. Just a couple little comments about it. So let's start. That's where it is. It's in Turner Valley. And I went there last July with my wife and had a fantastic 2-hour visit with David Farron, the owner, and Caitlin Quinn, the master distiller. She's got her master's from Heriot-Watt University and masters of distilling from Heriot-Watt. And these are two fantastic individuals who took absolute pride in everything they did. But let's I'm just going to just quick picture of the distillery. Here's the outside of the distillery, which is beautiful, really nice. And the tasting room as well, right there, really nice. And a picture with me and the aforementioned two individuals, and their banquet room right there, which is really cool. And I like this a lot because the Alberta Temperance and Moral Reform League, which I thought was kind of cool. So
yeah, it is. It is really cool. Yeah. Yeah, everything is kind of a throwback, isn't it? To times long gone, and that's kind of what this distillery's been all about as of late, or from the very beginning, actually. So David has a farm. It's about 20 kilometers away from where the distillery is, and there he does something very original for Canadian farming. He farms his barley fields and his grain fields using horses and antique equipment. There's not too many of these left around, but he is super connected to the land. He's into protecting that heritage. He really wants to have an emphasis on true farm to grain. There's no middle ground here. This is farm to grain, literally, and then grain to glass as well. And he simply just loves it. So they every September, when the weather's just right, they tie up the horses or get them ready, new horseshoes, the whole gamut. They attach them to a thresher, and a driver needs to work all the levers while trying to steer these horses in the front line. So there's no whiskey at this time of the day, right? That comes later. So so they cut this grain, and there's a team behind him, behind the thresher that does all the collecting and stuff like that. Because as the grain comes up off the thresher, it gets bound into these bushels, and then there's people behind that stack them to make sure that they're drying in the wind properly. A week later, a team shows up with pitchforks. They put them into a machine like a horse-drawn machine to separate the grains from the stalks and all that stuff. And then it's off to the distillery after a few more steps to ferment, distill it, and then age it.
I just think it's cool. They throw the call out there to the farmers, and farmers and farm hands, everyone go down there. It's all by hand. And then at the end of the night, big party, lots of food, lots of whiskey, of course. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. And I told them if I was ever there, I would love to do it. But if you guys want to find out any more about that, here's the article. And if you'd have to go to CanadianDistilleries.com. You see that, you get more in depth. And if you want to go even more in depth, you go down below into the comments down there, and you see the Whiskey Book Club and the After Dram that we all did together for 2+ hours of information. So let's delve into it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So apparently they produce about 1,800 bushels a year of barley off this farm. So it's quite impressive. And it's just as impressive as this whiskey. I really like it.
I do. And I love the whole thing. But like I was saying before, the nose just gets me. I love the nose. I could just sit here and, smell it and smell it and smell it and smell it for a long time. But while you sniff yours and take a couple sips, I'm just going to throw down a couple little pieces of information. It's 750 mils. This guy right here. It's available both Canada and the States. It costs $100 roughly Canadian to get it. It's a new European oak and ex-bourbon matured whiskey. So no finishing here. They mature each one individually. And Caitlin blends them together, figures out what she wants to do. And that's what we ended up right here. The illustration there is a fox that's dedicated to the Alberta farmer. Smart as a fox, hardworking, and justifiably proud, they said. And the last tidbit of information I'll give before we start tasting is the Angel share, 10% ABV, or 10% that they lose a year. And because of that, the ABV goes up in the barrel, which I thought was kind of cool because it's so arid in Turner Valley.
No, is the fox into it for the free meal and the whiskey at the end of the day?
He does. Well, he probably steals some beforehand because he's a smart fox. And if you're smart, while everyone else is working, maybe he's dipping into it too. Yeah. And there's tasting notes as well on that article right there. I'm going to cluck it up again. So tasting notes isn't what Blair has. And I always refer to it a bit and try not to make it influence me too much. But what you said about fragrant, you said rose water. And when you hit rose water as a description, all I was smelling was flowery. And I was trying to pinpoint different types of flowers that might be in it, but it is very flowery and very fruity.
Yeah, that floral component to me is kind of like almost like as you add water to it, it starts to bring more of that out. And I found it almost sort of like a baby powder, which is I compare it to roses and vanilla. So that is kind of where
you could tell you've had kids recently, right? The baby powder.
Yeah,
because I could relate to the smell of baby powder and diapers and that stuff forever afterwards.
And it's that fresh floralness that I got, and I'm assuming that's coming from the European oak, but there's some dark fruit. Davin got
spicy too, and the spicy I thought I was getting from the European oak.
Yeah, maybe.
But on the nose, it's spicy on the palate, but
Davin was getting a lot of kiwi, and I get more of a kind of a tangy citrus character that you get in a kiwi, like a little bit of that.
Okay. I couldn't tell which fruit. I was hitting pear. I was hitting fresh fruit as opposed to like stewed fruit or sherried fruit type thing, but it was all fresh. Caitlin, in her tasting note, she has apple, and she mentions apple both on the nose and the palate. I don't get the green apple. I was looking for that, but it's maybe pear, maybe plum. I'm having a hard time with the fruit, but
it's pretty tight. Like I find that the whiskey is very, like she's really done a well job of composing this thing into this big unit, so to speak. And it's kind of funny because my son, if I'm getting stuck on a whiskey that is like this, where it's well integrated and really thought out nicely, I usually get my son to smell it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, there's cherry, chocolate, vanilla, and maple," and he walks away, and I'm like, "Perfect, thanks so much for that."
Thanks, buddy.
I got him to come over. I said, "Hey, Wes, what do you think of this?" And he smells it. He goes, "It smells like your breath."
Okay, good. So my wife's my sounding board for that. So your child that's good because he's
that's how integrated it is. If it smells like my breath, which because I'm drinking this whiskey, then you know that it's really woven together nicely.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with apricot and plum. But the rose I can do, but I'm thinking about the other flower. Sorry, it's purple flower from France. Lavender. I'll try a little bit of lavender is what I was trying to get, as opposed to the rose. But when you said the rose water, I was trying to hit the different flowers that I know, because
it's definitely like field flowers, right? Like on the wild side.
But and when I went to the sweetness, I thought I was gonna get a honey sweetness. It was a little bit caramelly, but then it turned into the cotton candy, the very candy-like candy.
Yeah,
is what I get on the nose later. All on the nose, not the palate yet, but
I guess it really jumps on the palate, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's spicy. So if someone would have said this was a blend, and they would have said there's some like 2 or 3% rye in there, I wouldn't have argued with them, because it starts off with kind of that spicy, and maybe that's the European as well.
I don't know. It's a spicy heat, but I think it's a really welcoming spicy heat, especially as it starts to dive into. I do get the honey sweetness off of it, and I find that's the most rewarding thing about this whiskey, is that you're blasted with these spices that just quickly just go into honey and like clean malts and all kinds of roasted wood and that kind of thing. And that's the other thing I really appreciate about this whiskey, is that it doesn't have loads of those young woody characters. It's quite integrated and nice within those flavor profiles.
I did get the honey, but it's only at the finish, and it's the finish of the finishes, and because I do get caramel, and I think someone said butterscotch. I don't know if you did or Caitlin's get. I didn't get butterscotch, more caramelly on the palate, but then at the finish at the end, maybe it's just at the back of the throat. It's kind of the honey, the heathery honey type thing, is what it. That's the very last note I get, and I guess it's medium long finish. It doesn't change a lot. It goes from the heat and then into the honey at the very end, but so not changing, but fairly long, which is nice. And the heat,
I love it. It's
not a spicy peppery either, like you were saying. It's not like a pepper. Yeah,
you get a bit of a peppery tingle on the finish, but at the same time, it's not. There's nothing that is offensive or anything like that. It's there and it's present, but it doesn't slap you around with all the other flavors.
Yeah, this is a very nice one. Well, and you can tell I've had that much of it. I didn't just buy this, by the way. I bought this right there in July is when we bought it at the distillery. So I've had quite a bit. I'm enjoying it. But over time, I'd say give it 20 minutes before you taste it. It's like pour it, give it 20 minutes. And I put these little things on it just to keep that vapor in there. But I like at least 20 minutes sitting just to get more on the nose. And if we had more time, almost 13 minutes, I'd do it with water. And it does change with water as well. And it gets more, I thought.
Yeah, the floral comes out on the with water, and it just you're right, it's a slow sipper. Take your time with it.
Yep, that's a good pour for a little bit. I won't drink that too fast. But the thing is, I do smell. Like I had this again last night, and I think I was smelling it for 2 hours before I finally started having little sip, watching the movie stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Any last comments before we sign off there, buddy?
No, I'm impressed with this whiskey, and I can't wait to see what's next coming out of this distillery. Their malts have been growing from release to release exponentially into these very fine entries on the Canadian scene.
Yes. Oldest distillery or micro distillery, or I don't know what to call them. They're not a micro distillery. Let's call them a craft distillery. The oldest craft distillery in Alberta, and they're doing fantastic. And hopefully either you or I can get our hands on the single malt or single barrel single malt that they just put up. So ladies and gentlemen, thumbs up. This is fantastic. If you have the chance to buy the number 4, well, actually try to get 1, 2, 3, 4 and compare them. But 4 is my favorite so far. And Caitlin just getting better and better with every single malt she does. So cheers, everybody. And thank you very much, Blair. And I'll see you next Tuesday, buddy.
Yeah, see you next Tuesday.